vote on these minutes.
Right.
So the first one, me, John, Marie. That's it. 3 of us. The second one, me, John.
Remember, I have to sign
Right here.
so I shouldn't do this.
Unless you're hiding. If you want to get off camera.
Yeah,
Do
there's 3
you
on
want
the
to say
first one.
something and you want to be able to say it wasn't you that said it?
Oh, okay.
Lean back a little bit.
All right. Ready?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's right. We're not recording this.
No, well,
On camera.
Oh, yes.
not officially.
I'm not part of the we.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the special meeting of the Bristol Planning Commission. Start off by having the members introduce themselves, starting on my far left, Mr. White.
Alan Weiner, City Planner.
John Seward, Vice Chairman.
Very arrogant commissioner.
And on my far right,
Glenn Chalder, Planning Consultant.
Paul Strutter, City Engineer.
Marie Keaton, Commissioner.
and Bill Leeds, Chairman. First item on the agenda is approval of the minutes of our August 6th meeting, and the voting members will be Commissioner Soares, Commissioner Keaton, and myself. So motion would be in order to accept the minutes as presented.
Mr. Chairman, I make the motion that the Planning Commission accept the minutes of the special meeting on August 6th, 2014.
Is there a second, John?
Yes, there is. Second.
Second, okay. Any discussion? All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Next item is the approval of the minutes on our special meeting of October 1st, 2014. Voting members will be Commissioner Soares, Commissioner Keaton, Commissioner Harrigan, and myself.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that the Planning Commission approve the special meeting minutes of October 1st, 2014.
Second.
Motion is made and second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Madam Secretary?
Next order of business is the update on 2000 Plan of Conservation Development. Commission discussion of proposed telephone survey draft.
Welcome, everybody. This is an exciting meeting for us for a couple of reasons. The first of which is that we have included as part of our work on the Plan of Conservation and Development a survey, a telephone survey of 400 randomly selected Bristol residents. So the numbers have been polled, if you will. So the survey firm has done its preliminary work. Once we've been through the questionnaire tonight, we will go ahead and refine it. The goal is it will go into the field on Friday, and the survey results will be compiled, 400 completes, over the course of the subsequent week. We have specific age targets and neighborhood targets to make sure that we get a broad representation of the city. And the whole reason that we're doing this is because at meetings, and in this day and age, sometimes we don't get broad age or neighborhood representation. So just to make sure that we understand the issues that Bristol residents care about, we are going to complete the telephone survey. So my goal tonight is to work through the survey questions with you. This is a longer survey instrument than normal, but I think a lot of these questions are important. We can feel free to take questions out. If we add questions in, we may have to consider what we might take out to fit that one in or whatever. But again, the most important thing is questions which you think are important for the city should be in here.
So one question.
Yep.
Knowing that we sit on the Planning Commission, were our names removed from
No.
the sample first?
The numbers are randomly selected.
And then, okay, so...
I think I've gone through the probabilities realistically that in a community of probably 25,000 households, 24,000 households, the chance that any of you would be called, it's slight. If you get called, I think if you probably politely decline because you're involved in actually the crafting of the document, I think that would be the most appropriate thing. It would almost be like being struck twice by lightning type of thing. The probability
It's like winning the lottery.
There you go.
Which I never do.
So there's two things tonight. The first one is to go through the survey so that we can get that ready to get out in the field. And the purpose being that I'll also be working on crafting the plan and then integrating the survey results into it so that before our next meeting, you will have a draft plan of conservation and development for Bristol in your hands, and we'll talk about that in December.
That's good.
And then the other thing here tonight is booklet number 8, which is an overview for us to have a conversation about implementation.
Okay.
So first things first is the survey.
Is the idea to make 400 calls or call till you get 400 responses?
It's 400 completes. So if there are, if somebody drops out at question 48, doesn't count. 400 completes.
So, like question
All right,
one,
that's good.
are you a Bristol resident? If you say no,
That doesn't count.
it doesn't count, okay.
It's 400 completed surveys.
Okay.
And by completed all the way through,
Yeah.
Right.
to the end.
You're trying to split up the demographics?
Yeah, so there are 2 questions right now that, normally in a survey, the demographics go at the very end. There comes a point in time that I have specific targets for age and neighborhood, that those 2 questions may get moved up to the front, because they're not going to go through 60 questions with somebody if it turns out they're the wrong age or the wrong neighborhood, and they need to fill that. So the basic protocol is this: the numbers are randomly selected, they call the number, we have a press release which is ready to rock and roll, which will go on the city website and to the local media, so that people will be aware that when you get a phone call, this is what caller ID will say. If people say, I don't know this number, I'm not answering, they will leave a message and say, you know, I'm from Great Blue Research, we're doing the survey on behalf of the city of Bristol. You can get, you know, go to the city website to learn more about the survey. We will call you back. So they will do a call back, and they'll do up to 2, after the initial call, 2 more callbacks before they drop the number.
Okay.
So it's very difficult for them to schedule a follow-up time, but this is what they're going to try
So
to do.
they're not going to allow the taxpayer to call them back?
That, it's generally not, because
Okay.
at this point in time, part of the value in this survey is from the randomness of it. So
Okay.
once a number's been picked, they hang on to that number until it sort of makes no more sense anymore.
Okay.
And the purpose for doing A, this number, and B, following that protocol, is we get a margin of error now around the survey results, which give us confidence that we believe that, you know, plus or minus 3.5%, that this is how Bristol residents feel about this issue. And I think that's the value for this commission as we move forward.
If you're targeting a certain demographic, like 30 to 35,
Yeah.
and you fill, do you have a certain quota for 30 to 35?
Yep.
And once you fill that quota, if you know they're 30 to 35, it's just, thanks a lot, this was a 3-question survey?
There's a range, yes.
Okay.
There is a range, if you will, that we will
Okay.
accept around these numbers, like, so 30 to 35, 30 to, it's actually 25 to 34 is what the census was, so
Okay.
71 people.
Okay.
So I think somewhere between 70 and 80 is what we would accept on that. But the bottom line is that 85 plus, we need to get 14 people, 85 plus. So.
And you're randomly calling hard lines?
And cell phone numbers.
Okay.
So it works out very close. In terms of just randomness is random.
Yeah.
Well, if it's cell phone numbers, then I can understand, but if it was just hard lines, I would think you would be hard pressed to get anybody.
And geography as well. So we have the neighborhoods broken out, and based on the 2010 census, we know how many people live. And so again, we're going to make sure that we get representation from different areas.
So it's a representative sample in terms of geography and age.
If you don't do this, what I have found in the past is that sometimes younger people don't answer their phones or don't choose to participate, and as a result, you can get an overrepresentation of older households. And so the issue is, no, we're going for the age demographic, and we have to call 600 households to get 400 completes and meet our targets.
Yeah.
This is what's going to happen.
Okay.
This is why we hired a professional to do this with us.
I like the way you put in your script, this is not a sales call. You've already made an explanation before you got there.
Yep.
I think that's more effective than, hello, oh, this is not a sales call, which means it is.
Mhm.
That's good, because you explained why you're calling, and it doesn't need to be pulled out of a caller, you know.
Right.
So I think in terms of the questions, the first couple of questions in the survey form are meant to sort of pre-qualify people, ask them some kind of puffball questions at the beginning just to get them used to interacting with the person. There's really no major policy implications that are going to come from this, but it allows us to kind of, get started. Any questions or comments on any of the questions on page 1?
Just out of curiosity, how did you pick 20 as the 28-year-old versus 21 or 22? Or just curious.
Census information,
Okay.
which basically breaks the age groups down.
Okay, good.
So, a lot of times, there's a tendency to go 25 and up, but I think it is important for younger residents. And one of the things that we found from the population projection information is that Bristol tends to attract younger households. And people who moved here early in their lives,
Okay.
maybe living on their own apartments or condominiums, I think it's important to get those people.
Okay.
On page 2, asks some basic reasons why people move to Bristol, how they rate the overall quality of life, whether they see themselves living in Bristol 20 years from now, and then just a kind of an open-ended question about what they see as the most important issues facing the city or things the city could be doing to improve the quality of life.
So those are really kind of open-ended questions.
They are. I mean, I think we're able to get as many questions in as we have because many of them are closed-ended. In other words, the response is, do you agree or disagree? And those are rapid fire. Those move very quickly. The ones which are more open-ended are the situation where people have to type and they have to code them as they go, but they're also the opportunity for the people of Bristol to tell us what's on their mind before we get into the later questions, which is we're kind of forced. So before we ask them the forced questions, this is a chance for them to tell us, what's important to them.
On question 6, do you think you need to answer between good and poor?
No.
No?
Because it's a forced choice. In other words,
You can't
if
say
you said
it's
so or
it's all
fair.
right.
So, is that good or is it poor?
Okay would be good to me.
Yes, I think.
So if you have an odd number, Paul, everybody goes to the middle because they don't want to be seen as extreme. So you typically, it's a typical survey methodology to go with 4 to force people one side or the other. The same type of thing happens in number 7. If you just had improving, no change, or declining, so will you make them, no change, but, and ask that question.
Glenn, on question 8,
Yep.
not unlike the question Bill asked, on the first page, why was the number 20 years picked as opposed to, say, 10?
Because I think I was really interested in more longer term in terms of people's perspective, not immediate in the next year or 2 or 10, but really 20 years from now. Are you believe you're committed to Bristol longer term?
Okay, and you don't see this generating any answer that people go, I don't know, 20 years is too far out for me to, to think about whether I'm going to still be here or not.
Especially an 85-year-old guy.
Yeah, I was going to say, the age demographic might kind of jump in there.
Well, I'll be in Bristol, but I won't be living.
Well, it does say living.
that they would still be in, well,
You
it
could
does say living.
yes.
You get a lot of don't know for that.
I haven't in the past.
I say that because of the 20 years of that.
It's a long time.
Kind of hard to.
So what are we going to do with this information when it comes back to us?
Well, it seems to me, that it provide. I suspect what the survey is going to be of the most value in sort of in a holistic sense, that any individual question may have interesting components associated with it, but it seems to me that really what you're trying to get at is kind of a big picture. The fact that if you focus on just that question, that could be problematic. But if you look at that in the context of all the other questions and answers, maybe the fact that this is 20 years isn't that big of a deal. I don't know. I'm just.
Well, I was thinking that possibly give us a different picture if people keep saying, I don't know, because then, that could be saying something tied in with the other aspects that, it's not going to be worth my
Right.
Yeah.
It
My
could correlate
God.
to how old they are too, 20-year-old
Right.
versus a 40 versus
Right.
a 60.
Well, if they said yes, then that makes it obvious that they want to stay. If they say no, can you have a follow-up question as to how long do you see yourself living in Bristol?
That's almost too detailed, but I'm thinking now that when I crafted this originally, I was thinking that 6, 7, and 8 were all tied together. So 6 was, how do you feel about the quality of life in town? And it's either good or very good, fair, or poor. So number 7 is, do you think the quality of life is improving, declining, about the same, what's your thought? And then 8 was kind of a circle back and a question. And so that realistically, if people say, well, I think it's good, I think it's improving, but I'm still going to be out of here, then the issue, there were other issues sort of going on here. So one of the things we're going to be able to do with the survey results is cross-tab them and be able to sort of compare answers to questions. And if we start to see differences between responses and people who are staying, or interested in staying in Bristol say this, but people who indicated maybe leaving say that, it starts to give us an indication of some of the things that may be going on.
I didn't see anywhere else in the survey where it really asked the question, are you planning on staying in the city any length of time? This was the only reference to it. I mean, are we trying to capture what percentage of the city is planning on leaving?
Not in that sense, no. I mean, the question in a sense is, do you see yourself living in Bristol? And so the issue, if some people are saying, you know what, I will be retired and checked out of here by then, because I'm going to go to Florida, or I'm going to go live some other place. Or people, you know, who are young and saying, yeah, I see myself living in Bristol 10 years in the future. It gives us a sense of sort of the longer-term outlook. But I'm tending to agree with Alan here that maybe 20 years is too long. Maybe we should say 5 or 10 years from now. What do you see? Do you see yourself living here 5 or 10 years from now? And see what we get back for responses.
I could even option 5 or 10 and just say 10.
I'm going to talk to our survey guys
Yeah,
and
okay.
ask them on this.
I think 20 by itself is,
Long time.
It is a long. I'm not even sure I could answer that question fairly. But my goal here is to be somewhat conversational too in the survey, so leave it kind of loosey-goosey. Like, hey, 5 or 10 years from now, what do you think? That's maybe an easier question than say, hey, 10 years from now, where are you going to be?
5 to 10 seems to make, that doesn't seem to make a lot more sense.
Yeah, I think you're more likely to get a more definitive answer
Yes.
if that number is lower than 20 people. 20 years, I don't know where I'm going to be. I think you may not get the answer the kinds of answers you're looking for if that number is viewed as being too far into the future.
Anything else on page 2?
Did you say, on question 8, did you say if they say no, the researcher will follow up with them, or no?
No. It just gives us a frame of reference so that we can start looking at some of the other responses later on. And, you know, if we cross-tab people who don't see themselves living in Bristol, are they more negative on certain things, or what's their impression? Is there something within the city that they disagree with, or see what we get back? On page 3, we now start to get into a bank of questions. And the questions on the top of page 3, as we've talked about before, we do have the sort of conservation element of the plan. So these are intended to be conservation-type questions, things that people might want to protect or preserve or enhance. So the questions relate to things like, are we doing a good job of protecting natural resources? Are we doing a reasonable job in terms of open space? What about community events, et cetera? And again, we try to form these on the basis of a statement and ask people whether they, agree, disagree, strongly, etc. Any thoughts or questions about these statements? So I think Alan gave me a couple of tweaks here. So we're going to go back. For example, number 16, the concept was blighted properties, not just blighted buildings. So we're going to go ahead and make some of those minor editing tweaks, and I'm going to, again, talk to the survey people about getting those things taken care of. Starting with question 18. We now start to get into development issues, and that rolls all the way through to the bottom of page 5. So we've got a couple of questions here related to downtown.
Downtown, yep.
And realistically, I think question 19 is an important one, which is really asking people in an open-ended sense what their thoughts are about downtown. On purpose here, I've crafted this, there's no question that says Renaissance. There's no question that talks about Depot Square, because those could be flashpoints, if you will, based on a lot of the issues going on. I think as we had talked about, I think it's important for the commission to kind of take a step back and ask people, what do you think about our downtown? What do you think the city can and should be doing about the downtown without getting caught up? Originally, when we had scheduled the survey, we had thought that the council would have completed their decision-making process at this point in time. We recognize that that hasn't happened, but I don't think that changes what we want to try to accomplish from the survey, which is kind of getting people's bigger picture perspectives.
What happens if you get pulled into it with an answer?
We'll record it.
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing that precludes someone from making that kind of comment.
Right.
But I think the commission's intent in the plan itself and the survey is, downtown is more than Depot Square across the street. Downtown is a much bigger issue. And certainly if somebody wants to, talk about that as part of their answer or their entire answer, nothing that prevents that. But you're really trying to get a sense of how people feel about downtown in general, and sort of big D downtown, and what can be done to improve that. I don't know if you want to comment about the comments that I got back from Justin.
I think slight wording changes in this one.
I had an opportunity to talk with Justin Malley, the Director of the Development Authority, because he obviously has an interest in especially the development portion of the survey and the plan itself. And his suggestions, without overly specific wording, his suggestion was to try to draft questions 18 and 19 in particular in a somewhat more positive way. Do you feel enough is being done by the city? I think his feeling was, again, kind of leave it a little bit open-ended, but what would you like to see the city do to improve downtown? Some may say nothing, it's perfectly fine the way it is, or don't let this happen or do let that happen. But I think he felt that give people the opportunity to sort of weigh in on the kinds of things they'd like to see improved in the downtown.
But isn't that part of 19?
In a sense it is. So really what we're talking about here is sort of two questions that go together, which are a little bit open-ended. What would you like to see the city do to improve downtown is probably a better way to phrase it than do you feel enough is being done. That's almost
like leading.
And you want to be very, very careful in this type of situation and try to even sort of balance your questions a little bit to make sure that that doesn't happen. So I'll take a look at 18 and 19 together, because I think 18 is what would you like to see the city do to improve downtown, and 19 could still be a question about are there changes that you would make, or maybe 19 follows from 18. Depending what you answer to 18 is whether or not you even get to 19 or it skips on you to 20. But the issue is related to, if you think the city is doing everything's going great, then you skip to 20, and if you have some issues, then well, what would you do? And get people to give us a response there. And I think on page 4, I think that Alan and I had a conversation earlier about the word redevelopment, whether that should be revitalization. Because redevelopment can connotations for people, not what we intend. What we're interested in doing is revitalizing our city, our downtown. I think on question 21, that everything about after downtown Bristol could be eliminated. Because the issue here is, we don't need to explain to people what we think the rationale is for housing. The question is, do you think housing would be a good idea? They may or may disagree with the purpose, if you will, when you ask it. And we can just ask them that question directly.
Question 29.
Yeah.
I think I gave you some suggested changes. Are you considering moving to a new home in the next 10 years? It doesn't account for the possibility that that new home may be out of town. And I don't know if that makes a difference in the survey.
I specifically asked this question not to ask about it in Bristol. The question is,
Okay.
Are you moving to a new house in the next 10 years? And then what is it? And the issue is, if people are moving to a housing choice or facility that they're not planning on staying in Bristol, but they're going to move to a new house, and the issue is they're not finding it here. So we've got question, what was that, 8 and 29, which when paired together, tell us what we need to know.
You want to scrap my note?
When you were asking about the mixture of housing in Bristol,
Yep.
did you specifically leave out high-end houses and low-income housing? It seems as if you left the top and the bottom out of the question. There's nothing on here about asking the question,
How would you word that, though?
well, low-income housing is easy, low-income housing. High-end,
What is one housing?
Section 8.
Section 8.
Oh, you know, words like low and high are kind of...
Well, that's all I'm just saying is if it was left out intentionally, but, you know, they're saying single-family homes and a 1,200 square foot cape is significantly different from a 5,000 square foot, I don't know.
Mansion.
Mansion, yes. So, I mean, it seems as if the top percentage and the bottom, you know, the top, say, the top 5% and the bottom 5% are intentionally left out.
I think the difficulty is that, well, if you look at the categories, and maybe not all the categories, but if you look at condominiums, apartments, single-family homes, especially those three categories, those have to do in large part with forms of ownership, and the land use boards can regulate, you know, single-family homes, you can regulate condominiums, you can regulate apartments. The boards don't have the ability to say you can't build low-income housing, or you can't build, you can only build houses if they're 2,000 square feet in size. So that the ability for the community to control or manage the kinds of single-family homes that are built is very limited. To the point where, I mean, you can't. There's case law in Connecticut that says you can't do that. As opposed to, you can certainly regulate multifamily units.
But isn't the point of the survey to get the opinion of the person taking the survey and how they feel about the present mix? Not...
Right.
I realize that if
but
there's laws that you can't do something, that's fine. But this is just to get an idea from the population of the city, how do they feel that there are too many McMansions.
But the question then becomes, what do you do with that information? It's interesting, it's what I always call, when I've done this kind of research and survey work, is what I call the so what factor. So what? What do you do with that information once you got it? If it's, well, people don't want any more low-income housing. Okay, Your ability
Well,
But I
to
think-
do anything about that may be very limited.
But I think Gary made aware of the situation here that I'm not sure in 28 that income is the right thing here.
Okay, that-
Maybe the point to add here is to take out actually 28
Okay.
Mhm.
and just add two things, which is, I would call it upper end housing and then lower end housing. Because the issue is income is a surrogate for a lot of other stuff. And the issue is, you know what you're talking about is McMansions versus Capes.
Right.
And I think people might gravitate towards upper end or lower end as being an issue on quality and size and other stuff, rather than income, which can be a flashpoint for a lot of other stuff.
We had a meeting once, planning commission, and the question was, the one developer wanted to build affordable housing. What was the definition of affordable
Right.
housing? Remember that?
Right, but there is a legal definition.
Oh, yeah, right.
There is a little bit.
Right.
And there's a PR on it.
But we talked